This is the case of Jane Toppan, also known as Jolly Jane Toppan, who, being a nurse, took the lives of over 100 persons. To patients and colleagues, Jane Toppan was warm, funny, and competent. But behind the grin of the plump nurse was a sadistic serial killer driven by lust, jealousy, and an insatiable desire for power over life and death. Jane Toppan wasn't just a murderer, she was a monster in a nurse's uniform. Jane Toppan was born Honora Kelley in 1854 in Boston, Massachusetts. She was the daughter of Peter Kelley, an Irish immigrant who worked as a tailor and was known for his severe alcoholism and violent behavior. Her mother died of tuberculosis when Honora was just a child. Peter spiraled after that, reportedly descending into madness. One story even claims he tried to sew his own eyelids shut, earning him the nickname Kelley the Crack. Whether that exact act happened or not, there's little doubt her father was mentally unstable. At age 6, Honora and her sister Delia were handed over to the Boston Female Asylum, a home for destitute girls. From there, Honora was indentured as a servant to the Toppan family in Lowell, Massachusetts. Though never formally adopted, she took the Toppan surname and was raised alongside their daughter Elizabeth, who would become one of her later victims. Jane reportedly felt rejected and second class in the Toppan home. Elizabeth was favored and pampered. Jane was the help. That early feeling of exclusion, combined with the abandonment and trauma from her biological family, seems to have seeded something deeply disturbed in her dot. In 1885, Jane entered the nursing program at Cambridge Hospital. She quickly gained a reputation for being cheerful and helpful, which earned her the nickname Jolly Jane. But behind that wide grin, Jane had already begun her descent into darkness. She started experimenting on her elderly and vulnerable patients, using morphine and atropine. Rather than following standard procedures, she played with dosages to see what effect it had on patients. She would bring them to the brink of death, sometimes reviving them, and sometimes not, just to study the results. But her actions weren't purely scientific. Jane later confessed that she got a sexual thrill from being with patients as they died. She even admitted to climbing into bed with them, holding them as they slipped away. The deathbed for Jane was a place of erotic power and control. Despite suspicious behavior, she remained employed. When she was eventually let go from Cambridge Hospital for negligence, she moved on to Massachusetts General Hospital in 1889. But even there, she couldn't resist her impulses and was fired after a short time for reckless drug administration by the early 1890s. Jane became a private nurse, a move that gave her even more freedom to act without scrutiny. This is where her serial killer tendencies heightened. Between 1895 and 1901, Jane Toppan committed a shocking number of murders. She later confessed to 31 killings, but many believe the real number was far higher, possibly as many as over 100. Her motives were a twisted mix of sexual satisfaction, psychological experimentation, jealousy, and cold-blooded malice. She didn't just kill patients she didn't like. She killed friends, employers, and even members of her own foster family. Some of her known victims include an elderly patient at Cambridge Hospital, a landlord couple who she described as old and cranky, a friend from nursing school who she murdered just to assume her position in a medical training program, her foster sister Elizabeth, whom she poisoned with strychnine during a picnic. Elizabeth died in Jane's arms, a fact Jane later recalled with chilling fondness. She said, "I held her and watched with delight as she gasped her life out." Elizabeth's husband, who rejected Jane romantically, so she killed him too. The entire Alden Davis family, after moving into their home under the guise of helping them grieve. She poisoned Alden and then his 2 adult daughters. Her plan was to marry the surviving son and inherit the estate. He refused. He too died. Soon after, one of the most disturbing things about Jane's method was how she blended the appearance of compassion with her murder. She would administer poisons in small doses over time, keeping victims close to death. But not quite gone. She craved control, not just over life, but over the very act of dying. She wanted her victims to look to her for comfort, even as she killed them. Jane's downfall came in 1901, after the suspicious deaths of the Davis family drew the attention of a toxicologist named Edward P. Rogers. When autopsies revealed that the victims had been poisoned, Suspicion turned to Jane. She was arrested on October 29, 1901, and investigators began to uncover her long trail of death. Under questioning, Jane made a full confession eagerly. In fact, she reportedly smiled and laughed as she detailed the murders, showing no remorse. She admitted to 31 killings and told police that her goal had been to kill more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived. Jane stood trial in June 1902. The courtroom was packed with reporters and horrified citizens. Her defense argued insanity, and it wasn't a hard sell. The public was stunned not just by the number of her murders, but by the cold joy she seemed to take in describing them. The court ruled her not guilty by reason of insanity, and she was committed to the Taunton Insane Hospital for life. She remained there for the rest of her days, reportedly just as dangerous and deranged as ever. Nurses said she would talk to herself, cackle at nothing, and fantasize aloud about killing more people. One nurse even overheard her say, "Get some morphine, dearie, and we'll go out in the ward. You and I will have a lot of fun seeing them die." She died in 1938 at the age of around 84. Unlike many of her victims, she passed away peacefully in bed. Jane Toppan remains one of the most terrifying figures in American criminal history. She's often described as the first true female serial killer in America, and her case is still studied by psychologists and criminologists today. What makes her story so disturbing is the contradiction she embodied. She was a nurse, a profession synonymous with healing, compassion, and trust. She was beloved by many who knew her, but under that friendly exterior was a woman who loved death, who derived sexual pleasure from suffering, and who craved domination. Over human life, her nickname, Jolly Jane, now feels grotesque, but in a way, it was the perfect mask. Her cheerfulness wasn't a shield from her darkness, it was part of it. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos of females who've done the unthinkable.